The aromatic steam from the beef noodle soup couldn't mask the tension in Golden Dynasty's kitchen. I watched my father-in-law, Frank Liu, ladle out portions with the same technique he used for 30 years, and the same disregard for food safety standards that had kept me awake at night for the past 5. My name is Jennifer Chen, and until today, I was the operations manager of San Francisco's most famous Chinese restaurant, the place my husband Michael grew up in, where his father built a culinary empire one bowl of beef noodles at a time, and where I discovered that sometimes family traditions can hide dangerous secrets. "Too hot in here," Frank complained, wiping his brow with his bare hand before returning to the soup. "Jennifer, turn up air conditioning." "Yes, ba," I replied, using the Mandarin term for father while reaching for the thermostat. I did mention that the kitchen's heat was due to the broken ventilation system, a repair he'd refused to approve for months, just like he'd rejected my proposals for food safety training, proper storage procedures, and documented suppliers. The restaurant was packed, as usual. Golden Dynasty's reputation for authentic traditional cuisine drew crowds from across the city. Food critics raved about the old-world cooking methods and secret family recipes. None of them saw what happened behind the kitchen doors. "Big party coming at 7, Michael said, poking his head into the kitchen. My husband managed the front of house, leaving the kitchen to his father's iron control. "Dad, they're food bloggers. They want to film the cooking process." Frank's face lit up. "Good. Show them real Chinese cooking, not this modern nonsense." He shot me a look. "No need for Jennifer's clipboard today." My clipboard, containing health code requirements, temperature logs, and supplier documentation, was seen as an insult to 30 years of restaurant experience. Never mind that I had a degree in restaurant management and 5 years of experience turning failing establishments into successful ones. "The videos will be posted online," I said carefully. "Maybe we should review the food handling procedures." "Enough." Frank slammed his ladle down. "You think your fancy degree knows better than 30 years of success. This is how my father cooked, how I cook, how it's always been done." I bit my tongue, thinking of the documents stored in my private cloud drive. Records of unsafe food storage, unauthorized suppliers, and worse. Things I'd discovered while modernizing the restaurant's operations. Things Frank had ordered me to ignore. The afternoon passed in a blur of service. I kept one eye on the kitchen operations while reviewing the files on my laptop. The restaurant's 30th anniversary celebration was starting in 2 hours, and something felt wrong. The new seafood supplier Frank had insisted on using, the unusual payment patterns, the unmarked deliveries. "Jennifer." Frank's voice boomed across the kitchen. "Where are you?" "Guests arriving." I closed my laptop and headed to the main dining room, now decorated with red lanterns and gold banners. Local business leaders, longtime customers, and food critics filled the tables. Michael was greeting guests at the door, beaming with pride. Frank took the small stage we'd set up, microphone in hand. "Welcome, friends. 30 years ago, I started Golden Dynasty with my father's recipes and a dream. Today, we celebrate not just a restaurant, but a tradition of authentic Chinese cuisine." Applause filled the room. I stood near the kitchen doors, watching the servers distribute special anniversary dishes. Something caught my eye. The new seafood dish didn't look right. The color was off, the texture strange. "And now," Frank continued, "I want to thank my son Michael for carrying on our legacy. He understands the importance of tradition, of doing things the right way." More applause. Michael joined his father on stage, earning proud claps on the back. But Frank's voice turned serious. "Not everyone appreciates our traditions. Some people," his eyes found me, "think they know better than generations of experience, think that papers and regulations are more important than family knowledge." My heart started racing. This wasn't just a celebration speech. "That is why today, I must make a difficult announcement. Jennifer Chen is no longer part of Golden Dynasty's management. Her modern ideas and disrespect for tradition have no place in our family business." The room fell silent. Michael looked shocked. He hadn't known. 2 security guards appeared beside me, hired for the event but apparently with other instructions. "Bye." I stepped forward. "The seafood tonight." "Escort her out," Frank commanded. "And make sure she takes all her clipboards and regulations with her." As the guards led me toward the door, I caught glimpses of satisfied smiles among the guests. Of course, They'd heard Frank complain for months about his foreign daughter-in-law trying to change his traditional methods. They thought this was justice. In my office, I quickly emailed myself crucial files before the guards could stop me. Years of documentation, records of every violation, every suspicious transaction, including what I discovered about the new seafood supplier, a company that didn't seem to exist. "Your keys," one guard demanded. I handed them over, along with my employee badge. But they didn't know about the USB drive in my purse, or the photos on my phone, or the reports I'd already sent to certain authorities. Michael caught up with me in the parking lot. "Jen, I'm sorry, I didn't know he was planning this." "Did you know about the seafood supplier?" I cut him off. "About where that fish really comes from." He looked away. Of course, he'd chosen not to know, just like he'd ignored all the other problems I tried to address. "You should go back inside," I said quietly. "Your father's big celebration is waiting." "But Michael, you might want to skip the seafood tonight." "What are you talking about?" "You'll find out soon enough." I got into my car, hands shaking slightly as I started the engine. The health inspector's report tomorrow should be very interesting. "Health inspector, there's no inspection scheduled." "There is now." I pulled out my phone, showing him the email confirmation. "Anonymous tip about food safety violations. They're coming first thing tomorrow. And they're bringing some friends from the FBI's smuggling division." Michael's face went pale. "Smuggling? Jen, what did you do?" "I did my job," I replied. "I kept records, detailed ones, about everything." As I drove away, I watched Golden Dynasty's glowing signs in my rearview mirror. Frank thought he was protecting traditions. He didn't realize that some traditions aren't worth preserving, especially when they put people at risk. My phone buzzed. A message from my former colleague at the health department. "Reports received. Task force briefed. Operation starts at 8 a.m. I smiled, thinking of Frank's face when he realized that his daughter-in-law's obsession with documentation had been more dangerous than he thought. Tomorrow would be interesting indeed. The next morning, I sat in a coffee shop across from Golden Dynasty, watching the drama unfold. Health inspectors arrived first, their official jackets visible even from a distance. Then came the FBI agents, followed by officers from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. My documentation had sparked quite the interagency response. My phone buzzed, a message from Michael. "What did you do?" I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my laptop and pulled up the files I'd spent years compiling. The irregular payments to the seafood supplier, the unmarked deliveries arriving after hours, the suspiciously low prices for premium fish that should have cost 3 times as much. Through the restaurant's windows, I could see Frank gesturing angrily at the officials. His face turned from red to white as they produced their search warrant. Michael stood frozen by the host station, watching his father's empire crumble. Quiet a morning, a voice said. I looked up to see Linda Martinez, my former colleague from the health department, sliding into the seat across from me. "Your documentation was thorough." 5 years of records, I replied, turning my laptop to show her. Every violation, every suspicious transaction, every food safety risk, including where that seafood really came from. Linda nodded grimly. Endangered species trafficking. The FBI's been trying to crack this smuggling ring for months. They just needed proof of who was involved. And I had all the proof they needed, I said quietly, watching more officials enter the restaurant, right down to the delivery schedules and payment patterns. My phone kept buzzing, messages from family members, restaurant staff, even food critics wanting comments. I ignored them all. The truth would come out soon enough. Inside Golden Dynasty, the inspection team was doing their work. Health code violations were documented, food samples were collected, financial records were seized, and in the walk-in freezer, behind boxes of Frank's specially sourced seafood, they found exactly what I knew they would. Containers of illegally imported fish, including protected species. By noon, the story had hit the local news. Famous Chinese restaurant raided, health violations and smuggling allegations. Food bloggers who'd praised Golden Dynasty's authentic traditional cuisine were now frantically deleting their old reviews. Jennifer. Frank's voice boomed across the street. He'd spotted me through the coffee shop window and was storming over, face twisted with rage. You betrayed your family, destroyed our business. I stood calmly as he approached, aware of the health inspectors watching. No, bah. You destroy it yourself. I tried to help you do things right, but you chose to put people at risk. Risk? He scoffed. 30 years, no problems. Your American rules, your paperwork, that's the real risk to our traditions. Traditions? I pulled out my phone, showing him photos I'd taken of the kitchen violations. Was it tradition to store raw meat at unsafe temperatures? To buy from unlicensed suppliers? To smuggle endangered species? His face paled slightly at the last accusation. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. I cut him off. You thought rules didn't apply to you. That your experience meant you could ignore food safety, ignore the law. Now you'll face the consequences. Michael appeared behind his father, looking shell-shocked. Jen, please. There must be some way to fix this. I softened slightly at my husband's distress. Actually, there is. But it will require real changes, not just cosmetic ones. I pulled out another file from my bag, a complete business restructuring plan I prepared months ago. New management checklist, modern food safety protocols, legitimate suppliers, real training for staff, and most importantly, complete transparency in operations. Frank started to object, but Michael grabbed the file. What's the alternative? Prison time for endangered species trafficking, I said bluntly. Complete shutdown of the restaurant, loss of all licenses. Is that what you want for your father's legacy? The next few hours were intense. In a private room at the coffee shop, we negotiated with health officials and FBI agents. My detailed records of the smuggling operation proved valuable enough that the authorities were willing to work out a deal. In exchange for cooperation in breaking up the larger trafficking ring, Golden Dynasty could survive under new management and strict oversight. Frank raged, threatened, and finally broke down in tears. 30 years of doing things his way. And now his daughter-in-law had forced him to change. But when faced with the alternative federal prison, he signed the agreement. The restaurant closed for a month of complete renovation. Every piece of equipment was replaced or thoroughly cleaned. The staff underwent intensive food safety training. New suppliers were vetted and documented. And most importantly, the management structure changed. I returned as Chief Operating Officer with full authority over kitchen operations. Michael became CEO, with his father moved to an advisory role focused on menu development, under proper oversight. The health department conducted weekly inspections for the first 3 months, which we passed with flying colors. When Golden Dynasty reopened, it was transformed. The dining room still held its traditional charm, but the kitchen was a model of modern food safety. We kept the beloved recipes but prepared them safely. Customers returned, drawn by the promise of authentic cuisine that they could trust. Surprisingly, it was Frank who adjusted best to the changes. Once he saw that we could maintain quality while following regulations, his resistance faded. He even started bragging about our perfect health inspection scores to other restaurant owners. You were right, he told me one evening, 6 months after the raid. We were reviewing recipes, documenting each step properly. I was so afraid of losing our traditions that I forgot the most important tradition, taking care of our customers. The local Chinese community's reaction was mixed. Some saw me as a traitor who'd exposed one of our own. Others, especially younger restaurant owners, saw an opportunity. We started offering food safety workshops, helping other family restaurants modernize while preserving their cultural authenticity. A year later, I stood in Golden Dynasty's kitchen, watching the dinner service run smoothly. The new ventilation system hummed quietly. Staff moved efficiently between clearly labeled storage areas. The temperature logs were perfectly maintained. My phone buzzed. A message from Linda. Smuggling ringleaders convicted. Your evidence was crucial. I smiled, remembering the day Frank had mocked my obsession with documentation. That obsession had saved his business, even if not in the way he'd expected. Michael appeared beside me, examining the daily inspection checklist. You know, Dad actually bragged about you at the Restaurant Association meeting yesterday. Called you the best thing that ever happened to Golden Dynasty. Better than the time he called me a regulation-obsessed traitor. I teased. Much better. He hesitated. You could have just walked away that night, started fresh somewhere else. Why did you fight so hard to save this place? I looked around the kitchen, at the blend of traditional techniques and modern safety measures, at the staff confidently following proper procedures while creating authentic dishes. Because sometimes saving something means changing it, I replied. Golden Dynasty wasn't just about the food. It was about family, about community. It deserved better than to be destroyed by pride and stubbornness. Last week, a young Chinese American woman interviewed me for her business school thesis on modernizing family businesses. She asked if I regretted exposing the problems instead of keeping quiet to protect the family's reputation. I showed her our new kitchen, our perfect inspection records, our thriving business. Real respect for tradition means making sure it survives, I told her. Sometimes that requires difficult changes. Golden Dynasty continues to evolve. We've opened 2 more locations, each combining traditional recipes with modern food safety. Frank still works in the original kitchen, but now he proudly shows health inspectors his detailed logs and properly stored ingredients. The smuggling ring's conviction made headlines, but our real victory was quieter, proving that cultural authenticity and modern standards aren't enemies. That true tradition isn't about doing things the old way, but about doing them the right way. Sometimes in the evening, when the kitchen is humming with properly regulated activity, I think about that anniversary night when I was thrown out. Frank thought he was protecting his legacy from change. He didn't realize that sometimes the greatest respect for legacy is ensuring it survives by adapting. The old saying goes that revenge is a dish best served cold. But in our case, all dishes are now served at precisely the correct temperature, with full documentation, and that's a tradition worth preserving.